people who have gotten together to help Ortur owners who are having problems are getting together with a group of people who do have questions. And we have an agenda that we're going to run through that starts with a tour, goes through installation, adds to that the 6 most common problems and how to solve them, and then we'll do a Q&A. But with that then, Ed, why don't you go ahead and do the tour?
Okay. Really quickly, let me just point out, this is the Ortur laser, and when you get it, you'll receive a bag with some components, a manual, and a chart as to what you can, some of the things that you can cut. When you look at the laser, this axis, or this piece, is what would be known as the y-axis, and this piece going across here is the x-axis. This is not attached to this when it comes, but it is only these 4 bolts, or these 4 nuts, that you have to put on to attach it. So it's not a very difficult thing to attach. When you do that, one of the things you'll be doing is you'll be plugging this cable into this little slot down here, and see if I can get the camera pointed to that place without flipping on me. And then later you'll be putting a cable tie in here to help hold that cable in place. You'll also be plugging this cable in back here. So as you look around at this side of the laser, what you've got is you've got your USB cable right here, power cable right here, and 2 buttons. The first button, the big button, is the power button. The other button is the reset button. And inside we have some LEDs, but none of us know yet what those LEDs mean. So we'll be talking about how to reset your laser if you have a problem later. It also comes with a pair of laser goggles. I got a second pair in case anybody ever was in the shop with me while I was running it. And I think that, oh yeah, I did want to point out to you also a couple of other things. This is the laser module itself, which attaches to the back of this bracket with those 2 screws and washers you see there. And you can loosen those screws and move that up and down to achieve a 55mm focus. And I made this little spacer with the laser and light burn, just drawing a rectangle, setting it to 55mm tall and cutting it out. And then that helps you to set up to do a cut. I also wanted to point out that there may be a couple of adjustments you need to make. One of them would be right back here, and that is if the Y belt is loose, as it was on mine, you have to take this screw out, pull a little bit of the belt out, put the screw back in, and then tighten it back, and that way you'll get the belt will contact the pulleys back here so that it moves the y-axis. If you need to tighten up the belt on the x-axis, that is actually done underneath. Right here, there are 2 screws, and you can move this piece back and forth to get more tension on that one.
Perfect.
Oh, and then the last thing to mention is on the bottom of the laser is the round focus ring. Now, when you're measuring 55mm, you measure to the bottom of this box here. But then when you're focusing, you use that ring right there. A good focus.
And Ed, could you show us the end stops too, please?
Yes, thank you for reminding me. So over here, and it's hard to sometimes get into some of these little places, but I think you can see right there is the stop for the x-axis. When the laser box hits that stop, that then tells it that it's at its home position. And then over here, and I think it's probably going to flip on me, but let's see what happens. See if I can get it. Maybe I need to go this way. Sorry about that if I'm making you dizzy.
I'm dizzy, Ed. A little further to right. There we are.
Counterintuitive. It's upside down. Can you see it now?
The edge of it. Now, yes.
Okay.
Or can we? Is that?
No, that's
just an end physical
That's
stop.
the wrong side, I think.
Oh, you know what? I'm pointing here. I think this is where I need to point.
Oh, there it is. Yes, right. Just to the left edge
right,
there.
Right there, that little chrome piece there is the left switch for the Y-axis.
Really distinctly different buttons.
Yeah. So that's the tour. Anything else I should show?
Not that I can think of, but this helps get us all on sort of the same page as to the orientation. Oh, and by the way, could you remind everybody where 0, 0 is and why you have it oriented the way you do?
Well, this confused me. So let's have the thing home. I'm just going to do it the easy way without the software right now. I'm just going to turn it off and back on. And 0, 0 is in the lower left here. Come on.
You're hitting the reset. There you go.
There you go.
There we go. This is 0, 0 right down here.
Okay.
And I was assuming when I first set mine up that 0, 0 would be over here and the top would be here. And I kept trying to figure out how to turn the thing around.
Yeah.
And I had to turn around my thinking. This is 0, 0.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about it, but your instinct really does make sense because your entire y-axis is out of the way and you're able to be under the head. So I just remember that the word auteur is the front of the machine. So left and towards you is the origin. Let's go ahead now and switch to another screen. So we move on to the agenda. And that we've already taken a look before we started the video at what the lineup is. We've just completed the orientation and tour of the Ortur hardware by Ed. Now we're going to go through the installation. And many of you have already done this, but for instance, I know of one or two who didn't upgrade the firmware, or one person who didn't upgrade or install the COM driver. So we're just going to go down this list. You folks have this in your inbox, so all these links that I'm about to use are there available to you. They're frankly all available inside of the Ortur manual, but the subsequent links link directly to it. So if I were to click on the Ortur manual, it's just a Dropbox. And in that Dropbox is the series of nested folders, and I link straight into the manual with that first link. And you heard Ed talk about how relatively easy this thing is to assemble. In the beginning of this document, I'm going to get to the one picture that probably says 60% of what you need to do, which is how to put this x-axis arm onto the y-axis arm and how to tighten it. But it's a very simple step-by-step, 1 or 2 clips. There's a zip tie you put around here. Got to mount the head on the bracket as Ed showed us. But the first thing that was in this installation process is actually the assembly. And by clicking that first link, you'll be taken straight to the page that talks about assembly and frankly, a lot of other things. Then, not on Mac, because if I didn't say this, Ed was going to correct me, not on a Mac, but on Windows, you need to install one of the virtual drivers, virtual COM drivers. I'm going to click on this and you're going to see that we have 4 to choose from. The way that they're different is 2 of them are Win 10 and 2 of them are Win 7. They're not just those 2. For instance, I'll click on the Win 7 and it says that it's Win 7, Win XP, and this one is 64-bit. Okay, so if that's the particular machine you've got, that's the particular driver you need to install. Let's go to one that is for Win 10. It's not just Win 10. This one happens to be for 32-bit, but it's for Win 10 and Win 8. So if that's the machine that you have, that's the driver you need to install. One of these 4 drivers is what you need to install on your computer. This is how the computer will be able to find the Ortur when it's connected to a USB port. So it's a really important step to not forget. So we did the assembly. We installed
I don't know if
drivers.
it's just me, but I'm seeing I'm seeing a Zoom window on and a Microsoft Update window on your video sharing. Is everybody else seeing that?
No.
No.
This is my problem, not yours.
It's fun to hear, though, Ed. Time to update your window, Ed. Then the next item here is the laser Gerbil. Now, I mentioned earlier, but when we put together our criteria of what we were looking for, one of the things that we wanted was to be able to use what we already knew, which was Lightburn. And frankly, with the help of the author of Lightburn, we were guided in the direction of this laser, along with help from some other people in the community like Doug LaRue. However, laser Gerbil is a particularly useful thing out there for a lot of these diode lasers. And we're going to have Mike talk to us in a couple of minutes to sort of trumpet the value of at least knowing about it and maybe considering using it. We did get what we want here, which is to have it work with Lightburn, but this other software, laser Gerbil, is used widely for these diode lasers. And so Mike will tell us why we should consider it. If you click on the Lightburn link, of course, it takes you to the Lightburn area, which is lightburn.com.
Can I make a comment here?
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I have a Mac, and I'm not sure if anybody else has a Mac.
I do.
But I couldn't get it to work no matter what I did. So I eventually figured out that I needed, maybe I needed the laser Gerbil driver. So I found, took me a while, but I found it, downloaded it, and ran it. And once I ran it, Lightburn worked. But when I'm in Lightburn and I turn off the laser Gerbil in the background, it doesn't work.
So pause that thought for just a second. Ed, what is your experience?
So my experience is that I installed Lightburn. I have never had laser Gerbil at all, and I'm using a Mac, and it worked from the very first try.
That's my experience as well. So we'll have to figure out why, but who was it that was just speaking that had that problem with the Mac?
Larry.
Larry, why don't you contact me offline and we can maybe talk about that. My experience was it was so clean and easy with a Mac, I almost doubted myself. It just worked. And so it's not a requirement from Ed's and my experience, but it obviously was for you. And so let's talk offline. So I clicked on the Lightburn link in that email and we came here. And the only reason I'm bothering to bring you here is because if you choose to buy, I want to point out the two options that there are available to you. So if you buy Lightburn, there are two licenses. There's the DSP license, and then there's the G-code license. Now, if all you're ever going to do is design and run your Ortur, you don't need anything more than this license right here. And using the code that we have, you can get this $40 down to $10. Okay, so when you go through the purchasing process, use our code and you'll get $40 reduced to 10. If you are going to be using the lasers in the shop, and I expect most of you will be, then it's just really handy to have the DSP version as well, because that's exactly what we use in the shop. This $80 would come down to $20 with that same code. So I wanted to at least clarify for you the fact that there are two out there and how either one will work for you. You may want the DSP one if you also intend to design for the shop laser. Okay.
Hey, Travis, this is Alan. Can I expand on that for a second?
Sure.
If you have only have one computer, using the shop's big discount is a good deal. If you have two computers you use Lightburn on, you only pay $20 a copy for them, but next year when you have to renew your license, it costs you $30 for one and $30 for the other one. So if you use two computers with one license for the $80 one, it actually pays to pay the $80 the first year, and then the $30 will upgrade both licenses the next year.
And so the bottom line is if you pay $80, you get 2 seats. Right. If you pay $20, you get 1 seat. And over the course of 3 years, it's actually cheaper if you have multiple computers to get the $80 version versus the $20 version. We can do the math for you separately, but it's good for Alan to point that out because you could end up spending a lot on individual copies, each which would be renewed for $30 a piece. But if you only have 2 computers and you renew the $80 license, it's only $30 and you get 2 seats, okay? So if that's confusing, don't worry about it. We can maybe ask Alan if you could post that in the forums for people to reference in the SIG. Would you mind doing that, Alan?
Yeah, if I can figure out how, I'm sort of,
Okay.
but I'll try.
Thank
Travis?
you. Yes.
This is Ian. I tried to do the cheaper version and it would not accept the code. So I had to do the $80 version with the discount. But then found out that only 1 computer per, so I think I'll go buy. But you can, for $40, I can get multiple licenses at the lower end without needing to have that.
Right.
If I don't need that expanded controller.
So I do get stories regularly of people saying that they used the code and it didn't work. And every time I go back to the author of Lightburn, he looks and he says, nope, everything's fine. And it turns out that people are just putting the code in the wrong place. Ian, you may be the exception to the rule, but almost always it's proven to be that if you choose to buy this, you add it to your cart, and then you continue with this checkout. It is when you do this checkout that you are given the opportunity to put in the code, add discount code or gift card. This is where that goes in. So you actually have to progress through the buying process in order to see where to put that in. If we put this in, then this would reduce to $20. But your number of seats would go from 2 to 1. Again, we'll get this listed up in the forums for people to reference in the laser SIG area. Let's go ahead and move on now, because this is another thing that everybody probably needs to do. Everybody I've talked to so far has needed to upgrade the firmware. This first link right here takes you to where you would download the firmware, and it's this 134 that you'll be wanting to put on your hard drive so that you can follow it through and do the install. The instructions, Doug found this for us. It's a very nicely detailed instruction written up in the Lightburn forums. I'm sorry, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, just want to mention, you talked about only getting one of the files. One of the things that seemed to give some people problems was not doing the 00 default first, and then the second, and then the update. Something about doing the initializing with the 00 bin first seemed to solve problems for people. If you just went straight in and did the 134 update, and the instructions even go through and say do the 00 first and then the 134.
Let's do a quick run around here. Did anybody else put in the 00 before the 34?
I did.
Who did?
I did. Sam.
Sam, okay.
Yeah,
And
there's somewhere in there it said that the first file formats the hardware and the second file downloads the new firmware.
Interesting.
Yeah, something
I
like
personally just put the 134 on and had no issues.
Yes.
Anybody else have that experience?
I did, no problem.
Okay, okay. So I think what we should keep in mind is that if it doesn't work when you just put the 134 in there, then Doug's link here would give you a more complete set of steps. And if you were to look at it, it really is quite an extensive step-by-step. I mean, it's hard not to do it correctly when you take a look at it. It's this whole section right here. Oh, it was the Ortur folks who put it up. I thought it was the Lightburn folks. But here's all the steps to doing it. It's not, there are a lot of steps. It's really not difficult. You just have to get the sequence right. So if for some reason it doesn't work when you install 134, then go through the entire sequence as Doug describes and is described in this document, okay? But you will very likely, I've not heard of anybody who didn't need to put in the 134. So that's a step in the process.
Travis, this is Alan. I haven't done that yet. I can't run mine with Lightburn yet either. but it says put it in the Ortur folder, and I cannot find that folder. Do you have to make that folder?
No, it appears as, think of it as a thumb drive being plugged into your computer. When you go through their sequence of steps, all of a sudden, you're a Windows user, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so in Windows Explorer, it would show up as a new folder in your Windows Explorer. And
Okay.
it looks just like any other folder, but it appeared only after you went through the first few steps there. It's something about pushing buttons and being connected, and I can't remember exactly.
Right. Okay. Okay. I was looking for the folder because I didn't want to get halfway through it and then stop.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't exist until you take those steps.
Okay. Okay.
So-
Travis, just so you know, this is Ed.
Go ahead.
I did not have to install that. In fact, I somehow missed this point. So I have not updated that in my
Okay.
works.
And what I understood from the folks at Lightburn is that it will work with the older firmware, but not as well. That is, you'll come across functions that don't work right. I think in particular, grayscale wasn't working right until you did the upgrade. And so we all want it, obviously, because we want to use all the features of Lightburn. But again, you would get the firmware on this link, and at this link, you'd get the step-by-step on how to do it. And then lastly, on this Dropbox that...
Travis,
Yes.
question for you, sir.
Sure.
Are
Who's
you
this Sir guy? Wait a minute. Who's this Sir guy? Go ahead.
Sergey, yeah. When you are referring to this link and that link, are you expecting us to see your screen?
Yes. Are people not seeing the screen?
No.
No.
I am seeing the screen, but I had to switch what I was looking at. Somehow you disappeared, and that's why I was seeing that other thing.
Let's use one of the features here. And if you can raise your hand if you do see the screen.
Well, clap or thumbs up.
Clap or wait, yeah, anything. Okay, well, we've got a lot of people who see the screen. Let's help those who can't see it figure out why. Is Dallas here?
I am.
Dallas, maybe you can help us debug this thing. Paul sees the screen. Actually, let's flip this around so we can see who is not seeing the desktop. Let's get a hand up there. Who was just speaking?
I'm not sure what you're asking. I can see a screen that says ITA 20 watt laser and a finger pointing to it. If that's what you're talking about.
Yes, I'm going in a circle right now with my cursor.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, so who cannot see that?
I can see that. It's just that I was kind of used to the whole screen, looking at someone's large picture rather than just a few people over on the side.
Oh, yeah, that was my choice. That's actually my having put people over there. We're just focusing on this here.
Yeah.
And the last thing I did was going back to the email, which you all should have received. I clicked on this link right here, which is speed and power reference. This is where you can find 3 tables for each of the 3 powers of laser. And when you click on that, you are shown these files. If I click on one of them, I have the 15 watt. So this one right here says the 15 watt laser. If I click on that, this is what Ed showed us just a little while ago on his desktop. It says, for instance, if I want to cut, well, this isn't in English. It'd be helpful if it was in English. Let's see here. Here's this one's in English. This is the 7 watt laser. But if I wanted to say cut some, jeepers, this is
Italiano.
Italiano. There are English ones here, just so you know, but it gives you for each type of material what the recommended speed and power is.
You're in a folder that everything starts with ITA. You've got to.
You're right. Let's go back up. And the English version, there we go. And the 15 watt, here we are. So if I was going to be cutting, some 3mm plywood, I wanted to engrave, here's the speed and the power. Actually, here's the power right here and the speed. Now they got it slightly cryptic here. This is a code, and this is in millimeters per minute. We can take this offline, but as a group, when we got together on Tuesday, even though these diode lasers apparently measure speed in millimeters per minute. Because we use millimeters per second on the lasers at the shop, we kind of agreed that it was best to just stick with 1 unit of measure. So just a tip to you guys, if you want to be able to talk to the rest of us, use millimeters per second, okay? So this was for the installation process. It's there in the documentation, but it's easy to miss a step or two. Like for instance, when I first installed on one of my Windows machines, I said, oh, I can't imagine I really need that Windows driver. I did, okay? I skipped that step. You guys should do these things that are there if you're in Windows and do the subset if you're on Mac. All right, any questions about installation and setup before we get on to the typical problems that people have?
I have a question.
Sure.
I've been following you here, but where is this installation and setup discussion? I can't find in the manuals, and I never saw it before, anything about Windows drivers. Several things you talked about, you obviously had a different manual or something than I did. I had one. It's just simple, and it said, do this, and I did it.
Right. Well,
so
Rob,
this stuff you're talking about, I didn't have. And
that's the reason for this call, Rob. I see right here that you actually were sent this.
Yeah.
And here's the list of people who should have received it in the email as about an hour ago. If you are on this call and you didn't get it, just write me and I'll forward it to you.
If it's in the email about an hour ago, I might have missed it because I was trying to set up my laser.
Right. Yeah, I didn't want people like to be distracted by it too much. So I just wanted to get it out so you guys had it in hand, but just before the call. All right, so let's, sorry?
Good, thank you.
Okay, good. So let's go on to the problems and fixes. Again, these are things that people such as Paul and Dallas and I and Ed went through the forums yesterday or the day before and just tried to find what the typical problems were, or even what problems we had encountered. And these are the 6 that we saw, and we would like to just give you an insight, because some of this might sound familiar to you. Connectivity fails. This does happen periodically. I can't say that I have actually figured out when it happens, but there's this magical trick that fixes it most of the time. And if it doesn't, then there are a couple of other tricks we have for you too. So if you do get a connectivity fails error, you first choose this option right here. Right-click the device button inside Lightburn. Let me show what I mean by that. This button right here, the devices button. If you right-click that, it causes the laser to reset.
I'm not seeing your Lightburn window.
Oh, I'm sorry, I need to toggle. That one I do know I've got to change. So hold on, let me do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so on Lightburn, this is the devices button. Let me close this up a little bit. This is the devices button right here. And if you right-click it, it will reset the connection. And I tell you, 8 or 9 times out of 10, it does the trick. So you will get that sort of error, and this is the way you can go about solving the problem. Okay, so let me then take us back. By the way, if you guys are curious about what's here, this is sort of preparation for a story that I'll tell on Tuesday, which is how to go from a hand drawing of something or a picture in a magazine to something you can cut for, well, cut for Dangonda is what it comes down to. But that's something I'll be talking about in a Laser Sig meeting next Tuesday. I'll mention it at the end. Let me go back now to where we were and go to the second and third ways that you solve connectivity failures. The first one was, again, right-click the devices button in Lightburn. The second one that Dallas seems to refer to periodically is unplug the USB connection and then plug it back in. And then lastly, it's sort of like the equivalent of Control-Alt-Delete, but reset the laser.
That works really well.
Good. So there you have how to deal with connectivity fails, which is a common problem. Another problem is you get an error that says exceeds boundary. The basic situation here is that you're telling the laser to do something that is outside the boundaries of where it can move. And rather than get into all the different ways you can set origin and have this become a half-hour conversation just about that, we said that we would just tell you guys to begin with, to avoid this error, just use absolute coordinates. That means that what you see on the screen, and I'm going to switch back now to Lightburn. What you see on the screen, if you are inside of the area that you see on the screen as the bed, then you will not get any exceeds boundaries errors. And so just choose down here the option of absolute coordinates. And when you choose absolute coordinates and you keep all of your cutting material inside this space, you will not receive the exceeds boundary error. And we can cover what the other options of user origin and current position are. But for right now, the quickest and easiest way to deal with that particular error that you'll get is to just use the absolute coordinates. Okay?
Hey, Travis.
Yeah.
I just got to say, it makes me every time you use that sample.
Yeah, I set up a whole SIG around it, buddy. What he's talking about is he and I have been working on coming up with Christmas ornaments that we can cut out on the laser. And he had some that were out of a magazine that he also hand traced. And so I was just reminded of the power of the tracing function and the node editing function in Lightburn. And we've been making ornaments using this technique. I just wanted to share it with people, not so subtly to say, hey, you can join us in the holiday gift build and make these things too. What fun, come on. All right, so the third one we had that we had heard several people talk about was what's called shaky characters. And this was when there was movement of various type. So for instance, if you put your laser together and you found that the x-axis wobbled or the z-axis wobbled, or that when you ran it quickly, your laser would slide around a little bit, those are the kinds of things that could cause this wobbling. We haven't found any wobbling that's due to bad functioning X and Y axis. It's mechanical in each of these instances. So the first thing that we recommend is tightening your X and Y belts. Ed, do you suppose I could pull a fast one on you and have you show people where that is done? Where you can tighten?
No problem.
Okay, let me just show you this. Let me give you the spotlight here. Hold on.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So this one, let's see. It just told me that.
Okay, I'm not seeing this.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. So right here
Where's
is
the
on
Ortur
the
label?
y-axis.
Ed, where's the Ortur label?
Our turn label is right here.
Okay, so right on the other side of that. Okay.
Right on the other side of this is a piece of plastic with a screw, and the belt, the rubber belt that goes around these wheels, is coming right out here. So you can loosen this screw and either slide this plastic over if it's not all the way over, or you take the screw all the way out, pull a little bit of the belt through, put the screw back in, and then tighten it back in the position. And that's how you would adjust the Y position belt. If your X belt is loose, then that is adjusted over here on the bottom of the arm. There are two screws, and you can slide this in and out to put tension on this belt here. Okay?
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. I
So
like
that.
I like that grid.
Say that again?
I said I like that grid. I'm going to have to draw one on mine.
Yeah, oh, and you'll see some really interesting ideas when we see Dallas's and other hacks. Let me take you back to our document.
Hey, isn't that illegal? I didn't think a woodworker was allowed to have a car in a garage.
It all depends on how powerful your wife is, I guess, huh?
Well, actually, she doesn't like to have her car in the garage, but I like to have mine in there. So that one's mine, and hers is out in the driveway.
Wow, way to go, man. So we just saw one way to deal with shaky characters, and that was tightening the X and Y belts. Another is to just make sure that you have your, again, this is all physical, this is all mechanical. So to have your laser well mounted, you'll be seeing Dallas's mount later. You've already seen a little bit, but we'll have Ed talk about his mount a little bit later. But the point is to not have your laser slip and slide on a surface. I would also just say if your Z-axis isn't, that is to say your laser head isn't securely mounted, that could be a source of wobble too. So the solutions to this problem of shaky characters, the solutions are all mechanical.
All right, well, yeah, all right.
Okay.
I secured my laser from behind. So
I'm sorry, Mike, what?
Oh, no, nothing, never mind.
Okay, so the next one here is how to go about focusing. There is, as Ed showed us, a 55 millimeter distance between the fins at the bottom of the laser head and the surface of your material. But the real way you determine that you are in focus has to do with the focusing of your lens. So you saw when Ed gave us the tour that at the bottom of the laser is a circle, which you can turn as you can with most lenses to focus. And what you do is you go into your light burn and you turn on very, very low power. I suppose we should show you that. Turn on very, very low power. And in light burn, let me see, I think it's in the cut menu. No. In the move menu, no. Oh, somebody help me. What menu?
It's in the run menu, I believe.
Run?
It should be in the move menu.
I think it's in the move menu.
Hey, Richard.
You don't have it. You don't have it enabled.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on my other laser. Hold on, let me switch lasers.
Yeah, it's on the move tab.
Yeah. So here I've switched lasers and I got down that COM port and my laser just reset itself. And now, since I'm using the Ortur laser setup, if I go to the move menu here, this is the move, you see right there, you'll see that we get this fire button. And if you hit the fire button and the power is really, really, really low, it actually is something you can both see on the surface of your wood and you can look at it safely. And what you do is you turn the lens to get the tightest spot that you can. So it'll blur big, and then if you go the other direction, it'll tighten up, and then it'll blur big again. So you're trying to get to that sweet spot of the smallest point. It probably isn't a circle. We've had people talk about ovals that they see or lines, but we all are looking for the tightest spot we can. And when we have that on the surface of the wood, we're in focus for etching. Would anybody add anything to that description? Good, I didn't blow it too badly. Let me turn my laser off. Okay, let's go back now to the next item, which was on the list. So that was how to focus. So at around 55 millimeters, which is that tool which Ed showed us, he cut from the laser. We hit the fire button, which is in the move menu, and we adjust the lens for the smallest light, one of the tightest beam. And when we have that, we are in focus. Okay. Now the next one, visible framing. So we all remember what framing is, I think. When you frame, you're basically telling the laser to trace the outside box if you hit the square frame button. And again, I'll toggle back over to the light burn. So if you are, so here we are in the laser menu right here. And if we were to hit start, it would do the cutting. But if we want to see the area that it's actually going to be covering, there's this frame button right here. And if you click that frame button, it does what you expect, which is it goes around the outside area of where you're going to be cutting, but you can't see where it is on the wood. And so since this is the second best trick we've learned, and it's also the one that I learned from Richard. Richard, are you there? Richard?
Yes.
Could you tell everybody how they can actually see the light when they're doing the framing?
Well, yeah, if you hit the shift key and hold the shift down when you hit the frame button, the light will come on and trace it around.
Thank you, Richard. Wrong Richard. Sorry, that's why you felt like you were caught off guard. Yeah, sorry about that. It's kind of nice you knew the answer though. Yes, when you hit if you hit this frame button while you're holding down shift, then it will actually turn the laser light on so that you can see it and you can see where it hits the wood. And all of a sudden you have clarity as to what part of your wood is going to be cut. Okay, so again, shift and holding this button down. Let me switch back now to the other.
Yeah, Travis, I have a question.
Sure.
Is there a way to show the max size that you can cut? In other words, how big is the field that you're working on? Is there a way to see it visually?
So Ed probably has an answer. I'm only guessing, but I saw his platform there that he did. And Ed, did you make a outer box that defined the outer boundary of your cutting area?
All I did, and if you want to put the focus back on the
Sorry, sure.
thing, all I did was go in to Lightburn, and I just drew 1-inch guidelines, you know, across the window, and I burned it. So.
And so you did get the outer extremes, both left and right, and top and bottom, right?
Yeah.
So that's if you just wanted the outer boundary, I would draw a box the size of the bed that you see on Lightburn. And I'll show you. Here we have the Ortur bed right here. I would just take a box and I would draw that box from the corners. I would probably even make these numbers, this in millimeters. So I'm going to switch it from inches to millimeters by clicking here. And I know it's 160 by 150. So if I say 160 by 150, then I have the full dimension, and then I would center it both vertically and horizontally. I have to choose it, center it vertically and horizontally. And now it's spot on for the outer boundaries. And then I would come over and I would do the settings for trace, which I would have gotten probably from that sheet of paper that they have where they tell you what speed and power to use for different materials. That would give you your outer boundary. Does that help?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, let's go back then to finish this up here. That was visible framing. So you depress the shift key before you initiate framing. And then the light comes on and you can see exactly on your wood where you'll be cutting. And then lastly here, it's not turning on fully. I've only talked with, I think, one person who had this problem, but there is something called the S value. It happens to be related to CNC, and I think it has to do with spindle speed. It's a value used in these lasers as well. And sometimes it's set to 255, and you need to set it up to 1,000. Let me just show you where that is. I said that, and it's over here. You have to go into your machine settings. That's this one right here with the wrench and screwdriver. Click on it. And on the device settings, you have this S value right here.
Can't see that.
See your screen.
Oh, is this not visible? Sorry, let me toggle that back over 1 second. So many buttons to push. So many buttons to push. Okay, this one. All right, and now let me, do you see the screen yet or do you not?
See you.
Well, let's remedy that. Okay. Okay, here we are. I had gone up to here.
There we go.
And this is the device settings button. Brings up this menu here. And over here is the S value. The S value max, you set that to 1,000. And one, maybe two people have had it at 255. 255 doesn't put out enough oomph. That's a scientific term. The lack of oomph causes things not to work quite correctly. And so you need to get to the spindle value of 1,000 there. Okay, so that was the last of the 6 items that we pulled from our looking. Primarily, we're looking at Richard Kremdorf's he got that before, he got his laser before the shutdown in China. And as a consequence, he had to struggle through these things himself, and he was kind enough to document them in our forums. So that's where we pulled a lot of these, not only questions, but also answers. And so you can always go back to the forums to see the whole backstory. Now let's open this up to anybody who had other questions, and let's make this back to the way we should be operating. We get rid of the spotlight. Okay, so anybody who has other questions about what we've covered or other issues, go ahead. Come on, we weren't
just got
that
mine
good.
together, so I just got mine together and I haven't even turned it on.
Oh, okay.
I've been playing with my new printer.
Well, Daryl, if you
3D
don't,
printer.
Daryl, I'll try to send you this email, but if I don't remember, just drop me a note and I'll forward you the details, okay?
All right, thanks.
Okay. Anybody else?
So, hey, it's Alan. I can't get my light burn to consistently connect. It keeps saying the laser's busy.
Yeah.
So
it fired like once and it moved and that was it.
So the error you get is busy?
Yeah, hang on a second, I'll read it to you.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. You're saying in the console window, the last word you see is busy.
No, hang on a second. It comes up with a pop-up in Lightburn. It says cannot connect to the laser, it's busy or something. Hang on, I just shut down Lightburn to reboot it. Let's see what's that up.
Alan, do us a favor, and if you were to have looked, if you were to look at the resolutions for what we have there for connectivity fails, right-click the device button or unplug and replug the USB. That, I believe, will remedy it for you, okay? So try right-clicking the device button.
Everybody's calling at the same time. Let's see here. Hang on.
Well,
hey, Travis, you have a 15 watt?
I do have the 15 watt, yeah.
Have you cut paper? What's
oh,
the
yeah, definitely.
what's the minimum power that you use for like paper? Just to give people a reference for where to start. And
yeah, so I would refer them back. I put several posts up in the forums where I did test cuts, showed my speed and power for different materials. I have to admit, with a 15 watt, I was doing 100% a lot of the time. So I would recommend the forums for that. Let me just pause here and say that the other people who were involved in preparing for this are Dallas and, let's see, who else was there? Dallas and Ed and Paul and I can't remember the fourth person. Doug. So you guys have anything you want to add into it so far at this point?
No, the only thing I'd add is that right click on the device button is gold. That's something that really helps you.
Totally agree. My second favorite was holding the shift key down before you click the framing. Those are two gems. Paul, anything you want to add? Doug?
Yeah, just to let you know, I mean, this is kind of like an FYI because I went ahead and talked to, who was it? I forget who I talked to about that shift and fire thing.
Yeah.
And it's actually something that's non-standard Gerbil. So this is something that Oz went ahead and tweaked his stuff so that it would do that just for this type of machine. It's not a standard Gerbil command, so you can't do it on kind of other machines.
You know what's kind of cool, Doug, is if you stay right there, you have TV eyes.
Oh, my monitor. Yeah.
Cool.
You just look like that.
Had a question.
Sure, Mike.
Yeah, on the Gerbil thing, did anyone get I got a pop-up that said there was a better version and you should install it. So I did. It seemed to work a little bit quicker. So
Mike,
name, but it was.
Mike, do you want to take a minute to show us what you've got for your Gerbil?
You know, the only I could show you that PowerPoint, which is really quick, but the thing that I like best about it was the thing that allows you to vectorize, and or you know, you could, instead of just having to well, I can show you the screen. It would help.
Okay.
Are you talking about the application called Laser Gerbil?
Yes, that's what he's talking about.
Oh, okay. Because Gerbil is actually the G code.
Right.
Firmware.
He's talking about the application.
The application.
Yeah. So, Mike, I think you should be able to share. Correct me if I'm wrong, but just go try clicking share screen.
Okay, where am I? Just I've got
Is it center of the bottom of your screen?
Yeah. Center of the bottom of the screen.
Share.
Okay. This the laser Gerbil? Yeah, that's the one.
There it
Everybody
is.
went away.
No, we see it.
No, we see it.
Still see it. Okay. I guess the I mean I could run this thing now, and it's 10 minutes and so on. But when I set it up, I need to go back to the beginning. Let me do this. Reload last file. Maybe that'll work. No. Yeah. Okay. So next, this bit here where it says vectorize or center line.
This is for tracing, right?
Yeah. So if I went to vectorize, and it's not going to let me do the other ones, but you can do the dithering, line-to-line tracing, center line, and if you've got a finished product that you're going to do this with, it's really fast to get it to do the vector thing, which I kind of like to use.
Mike, so, join us on Tuesday. We'll show you what Lightburn can do.
I'm sure it can do. It can do all the things this can do. But this is just I like the I just like the Gerbil. It seems to be a nice, simple, quick thing, and then I can come back and play with Lightburn too. But all right.
But you think it's worth getting to know a little bit, right?
I think it's worth playing. And the thing is that if you have this, if you run something on this, it's going to work on Lightburn better, I think. If this is in the background.
Got it.
Even if you got Lightburn up in front of it.
Okay. Could you end your screen sharing there? And let's go back to if anybody has any other questions. Because again, the goal for today was not to settle everybody's unique situation, but to deal with the common problems that people were experiencing and to get that out on the table. Some of you will still have problems. If you were to tell us about those problems in the forums, we can either answer them there or give you a call to work through them. But hopefully, so far, this has been useful to you. There any other comments before we sort of walk towards closure here?
Yeah, looks like Rob has a question in the chat.
Oh, okay.
I have a real quick question. I probably clear to everybody else, but when I read this manual, it tells me to plug in the USB into my computer for the firmware. Do I turn it on first before I open up the firmware?
So I'm happy to report that the thing that Doug found and shared with us, which is, let me just focus on my screen here, which is this item right here, up in the installation. This link right here that says basically a USB file copy. I chose those words just because they were available to link to this page. And this page does give you very detailed steps. So right here, you see exactly how to go about resetting, when to turn things on, how to go do the firmware upgrade. So if you just link on.
I was lost trying to keep up.
Pardon, Rob? What?
I think you showed that before, and I just got lost trying to keep up.
That's fine. I mean, that's fine. I mean, nobody's supposed to get this, all of this the first time. So it's there. And if people don't have this email, again, just let me know. Hey, Doug, did you want to say something?
Yeah, one thing about that USB plugging in thing, because I kind of, even when I was going through that, had a question on when to plug it in, because lots of times when you plug in the USB, it actually powers the device up. And in this case, it doesn't do that. In this case, you could plug this in and the board on the machine will not power up. It's the power button that still controls it, even though you plug USB. So you don't have to worry about when you plug that in relative to power.
Okay. Let me ask, is Richard Kremdorf out there? I could have sworn I heard his voice at some point.
Yeah, there's one other question here.
Sure, go ahead, Paul.
Has anyone else run into an issue with the focus ring being so tight that you almost have to take a pair of channel locks to turn it?
Oh, mine was really tight at first. It's still snug right now, but I can feel it loosening up as I move it a little bit.
So is it like continuous? You get 720 degrees out of focus, or just a quarter turn, or?
I think it'll turn at least a full turn. I mean,
yeah, no, I'm turning it right now. That's
okay.
Several turns.
So I'll get the wrench out and try it.
One thing that's pretty cool is that a credit card is 54 millimeters.
Is that right?
Or 53, I think, actually.
Okay, okay.
Very good, thank you.
Pretty darn close.
Okay, not bad.
So the
one more question.
The little card that comes with them, that's 55 millimeters wide.
Is it really?
Oh, there is.
What card?
Cool. In the bag, there's a bag of
little wood blanks.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Sure enough. Huh. Cool. Good to know. Thank you.
All right.
I didn't realize that. All right. So I'm going to come to Dallas in a minute and Ed in a minute, because I'd like to have them talk to what they posted in terms of hacks that they've done for focusing. I want to show you what Richard came up with first, though, which is
just a quick question. Maybe they can address that at the same time. I've got a brush and a little plastic thing with a foam piece on the end. Is that for cleaning the lens?
I was wondering too. I have no idea what it's for.
Okay.
Well,
Bob, did you have something you wanted to say?
The foam is a whiteboard marker.
Okay.
Oh, right. Okay. So guys, this is what Richard came up with for focus on. He's a turner, so he had large objects and he wanted to be able to go over a large range. So I can't remember what this type of lift mechanism is. I know it's used in labs for test tubes.
They call it a lab jack. Yeah.
A lab jack. Okay, great. And so here you can see he's got his laser mounted way up high on these boards. And so he can put large objects in there and he can etch the bottoms of them. He has a huge range. And again, because he's a turner, this is the kind of solution he needed. This is, again, in the forums, and I just thought it was a kind of cool hack. Dallas, if you wouldn't mind talking about this.
All I did was mount my laser on a permanent base, and I raised it up a little over an inch, and then I made spacers for the front of different size, different thicknesses of MDF. I've got a 12, a 6, some 3s, and then I use just some fiberboard for a 1 millimeter spacer. And I can adjust my focus based on the thickness of my stock. If I have all my pieces in there, it's in focus. And so all I have to do is just take my spacers that I'm going to remove, and I can check the height against the closest stack and remove that stack, and I'm going to be pretty well in focus when I'm done.
And where do you store this? Do you put all the boards on top and then you just put it up on a shelf or something?
I just, right now I'm putting it on a table, but I've got a shelf under the table I'm going to put it on.
Got it. Okay. And so you have, this is the little thin 1 millimeter layer right in here?
That's correct.
Okay. Cool. And you probably have enough to get a lot of different combinations that you did?
I can get any combination I can get within 1 millimeter.
Wow. Okay, good. Great, great. Is there a second picture here? Oh, here it is from above.
Yeah. And you can see I've got a grid I've cut into mine too.
Oh, somebody asked about that outer boundary. So did you do the way I described it with a big box and then just?
That's right. Just a box and 2 center lines in the middle.
Perfect. And look, guys, he's actually been, he's been at it. Okay, let me go to the next one. Let's see who that was. Ed, I particularly love the hanging aspect of yours. If you could talk about yours.
Sure. So mine is not as pretty as Dallas's. I just used some Baltic birch plywood. The knobs you see there are so that this piece will come off if I don't want to use that. And that way I can clamp it to the edge of the bench, and I can put anything, any height I want below it.
Okay.
The foot, well, and you see the handles there, you see the foot is cut at a 45-degree angle. And that's because I have around my shop wall, I have French cleats all the way around. And a lot of my jigs and things, when I'm not using them, go up on the wall. So I grab those 2 drawer pulls I mounted on there, and I can put this whole thing up on the wall out of the way.
Nice.
Do you have a support in the middle here as well, or are you just relying on pressure from the clamps on the 2 extremes to keep this bed level?
Actually, I do not have a support in the middle yet, but I do have a piece of wood cut. Next time I take this off, I'm going to just use a couple of pin nails and some glue and put a support in the middle.
Oh, got it. And you actually do have it clamped right here, right? I mean, you have a screw,
Yeah.
It's threaded. Okay, got it.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions, anybody, of those first 3? No? Okay.
Good idea.
I took a different approach, probably because I didn't see all these good ideas before. Probably wouldn't have bothered with this, but this is where we typically mount the laser head. These are the 2 slots that the laser head mounts on. So I cut a different one, and when it's in any of these slots, it's at a horizontal, it's set square. When Richard was messing around with this, he was finding that if it wasn't square, that it affected his cut. This was when he was doing domes, and if he was more tangential with his cut, it seemed to burn more. So he was concerned that it be square. So each of these is a step that you can raise the laser head to and then plop it in. It goes from a range of about 0.9 inches here to about 2.4 inches here.
And what material did you cut that out of?
That's MDF. Excuse me, that's, in this case, it's 3 mil ply. Excuse me, gosh darn, 3 mil acrylic. So this is just normal acrylic, just like the material that this is made of to begin with. And the design is up on the website, but I have to admit, I kind of prefer the kinds of things, I guess maybe I kind of prefer the thing Dallas did, because it's just so practical to just put in different sleeves and get the height you want. If I was a turner, I might have Richard's needs, or if I had a fancy way to hang this thing on the wall, I might take the approach that Ed did. I think I may actually revert off of this back to this, just because I don't know, I like the other solutions better. But anyhow, it's a 4th hack, and we have a section there called diode hacks if anybody wants to throw their own ideas in there. All right,
you
so
modify yours just a little bit, and you might be able to put a screw on the back and just screw it up. Just make a Z-axis.
It has the 2 screws that are on the, here. Let me just show you real quick.
Right. Yeah. Now I'm thinking that, I mean, just a slight modification to what you have with the tall slotted piece there. You could probably make something that just has a Z-axis with a screw that just screws and slides up and down. Yeah.
I could.
I mean,
and this is kind of that notion right there. You can see how the laser is mounted on the white acrylic. Anyhow, since that's not my preferred solution now, I don't want to spend any more time on it. Let's let me just show you the last little bit here, which is we have upcoming events, and on the homepage of SDFWA, you can see all these things are coming up over the course of the next 2 weeks. I want to draw your attention, because you guys are more technical. We've had this wonderful Fusion 360 SIG. We're only 1 session in, but we're really learning a lot. And it's something I'd recommend if you wanted to learn Fusion as your design and your toolpath generator. It's pretty amazing. We're going to do a tracing exercise where at the end, Mike McElney and I are going to duel it out. We're going to give a race. He's looking pretty surprised there, isn't he?
You never fail to surprise me. Keith.
So we're gonna
good.
Yes, we're going to go ahead and do tracing with Lightburn. And the other thing I wanted to share with you is, I don't know how many of you were part of the laser tour we did the other day. We went to Alan's house, we went to Mark's house, and we went to Randy's house. Each of them had different lasers, and they showed us what they had, how they had changed it, what their opinion was of it, what they would or wouldn't do again. It was really a great insight to different price points and different size lasers. That video happens to be up on the website if you were to go to it. But on Saturday, not this Saturday is a hand tools SIG, but the following Saturday, we're gonna do the same thing with CNC. And we've got 3 or 4 people who among them have something like 6 or 7 CNC that they're gonna tell us about. And we're gonna try to do it within an hour. So we're gonna see some wide-ranging stuff from my low end to Lou Edzema's $25,000 monster. 5-axis is just gorgeous. That is, again, on the 25th. And I just wanted you guys to be aware of that in the event that it was something you'd enjoy. And those of us who like digital tools tend to not just stick with one. You know, we tend to like the other ones as well. Anyhow, let me just throw it out one last time. Anybody with questions, etc., before we wind down?
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you.
I'm numb.
Again, if you guys go to the forums, if you have questions, and there are about 5 of us who've said amongst ourselves that we'll try to help. So anybody who's really stuck and needs help, that's what this community is all about. Learning from one another, teaching one another, helping one another.
Thanks for organizing.
Yeah, thanks for being one of the leaders.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right, guys, thanks.
I'm up and running now, Travis.
Thank you.
See how effective we were, Alan?
Yeah, except my man cave's all smoky. I got to turn some fans on.
Bye, guys.
Bye.